What's up, guys? Welcome to the Royale Roundtable, our first episode. So this is going to be a Clash Royale centered podcast. We're going to be talking about things such as the meta, the competitive community, and then like tournaments going on at the current time. So I'll have Nate Dalla on every week for the co-host, and then today for this week we have Clash with Ash and Clyde on as our guests. So what's up, guys? And do you mind doing an introduction for yourselves?
I'm Clash. I'm Clyde.
I'm Clash with Clyde.
I'm a recently retired professional player. I've been playing since beta. I've been in multiple tournaments like the Super Magical Cup, the King's Cup, and the Crown Duel, and that's pretty much it for me. I'm also the creator of Clyde's tier list on Reddit.
Nice. I am Ash, Clash with Ash, YouTube, and I'm a mediocre YouTuber, a mediocre player, and hopefully I'll be a above average podcast guest.
Great YouTuber, man.
Fantastic.
All right, so take it away with the questions, I guess.
Right on. So let's see. How do I introduce this? Do you guys want to start by talking about just like cool decks you're playing and, go from there?
That sounds fine.
Yeah.
Cool. Sure. All right. So with our first guests on our first rebooted podcast, we wanted to ask Clash with Ash and Clyde, what are you seeing out there on the meta right now? Ladder tournaments, challenges. What are your favorite decks, favorite cards? Let's kick it off with you, Ash. Sure. So the meta right now is interesting. I always enjoy how the meta kind of changes even without balance changes, right? So it just continues to evolve based on what people are playing. Right now, Three Musketeers are as popular as they've ever been. So it's nice to see that. A lot of Three Musketeer play, especially on ladder, but creeping into tournaments as well. And a lot of Graveyard, a lot of Splash Graveyard, a lot of Tornado, a lot of Graveyard, all kinds of different variations of Graveyard, right? Basically, Graveyard Barbarian Hut, Graveyard, everything. And then on the Hog also is kind of entered into the meta as well. And then, of course, a lot of Beatdown, Lava Loon, and Golem decks. So I think that the meta, people always complain about the meta, but I think it's pretty healthy right now in terms of there's a pretty wide array of different decks that are popular, so I'm pretty happy with it. That seems to be what I'm seeing, though. Those are the most popular decks. You actually see a lot of top players right now complaining that there's so much variety, both on ladder and in challenges, and I always laugh at that complaint because that's a good thing, guys, right? Yeah. Like maybe it's kind of hard for you to prepare against, but yeah, that's a sign that you've got a really well-balanced game, People complain either way,
right? No, I mean...
You're absolutely right. People are going to complain about it.
And the thing that makes it a livelihood for, like, pro players is having people watch and having people care about our community. And people care a lot less when one or two decks are meta, as we've seen in the past. Like, it just makes it a lot more boring for the viewers, and without viewers, you can't have a pro scene. So I think you have to take it with a grain of salt as a pro player, even if it bothers you at times. Which I like diverse metas. Yeah, every now and then you get bad matchups, but most of the time you can skill your way through it. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff in meta right now, and I think it's a good thing. I don't think it's really good when only one or two decks are meta, because then, I mean, yeah, you can say it's more skill oriented, but also you can get starting hands that decide the game when you're in mirror matches. So I think it's better to not have mirror matches constantly. So I like where the meta is right now.
Yeah, so just some of my favorite decks are like Ash said, the Three Musketeers Battle Ram deck with Elixir Collector. I love that deck because, partially because I love Three Musketeers and I'm an avid Elixir Collector player, and also because Battle Ram is a really cool card in my opinion. I'm excited to see what heal's bringing because, people fireball Three Musketeer and expect it's dead, and then you just drop a heal out of nowhere. And then I also like seeing it with Battle Ram. Like, it's really cool, kind of keeping it alive, and then the Barbarians afterwards. So I think heal's a really interesting card. And the other thing that Ash brought up was, like, my favorite point is Tornado. I love that card. It has such a high ceiling cap, and it's so satisfying to bring like a Hog Rider or a Giant or Golem to your King Tower and activate it. And there's really a high ceiling cap for that card, so I think it really separates, good Tornadoes from bad Tornado players. Like, unlike something like a Lava Hound and Balloon, where you can just drop it with not as much skill.
I think going forward they need to introduce more cards like Tornado, like Zap, that are those kind of high skill cap cards. There was a period of time, I don't know, 6-8 months ago, where the players who were just the most on point with their zaps won matches, you know? And I think Tornado's a lot like that. There could be more spells, you know, coming out like that. Or maybe they take some of their existing spells like Clone, like Rage, and make them sort of viable so that they become cards like that too.
Yeah.
I think maybe heal can be a card like that. Like if you get fireballed and then they expect to zap and kill it, you can drop a heal, like a predicting heal. Like I think logs like another one of those cards where prediction logs give you like the most value.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think right now people haven't really picked up on heal. Well, I mean, people picked up what it was good with, so I don't know if it'll need a buff before it becomes really good. But the cards is good with our three musketeers. It's actually really good with minions and minion horde, because a lot of things like poison don't immediately kill them, and you can, in a minion horde, if a minion horde stays along for a long time, it does a ton of damage. So those are the decks I've seen it mainly with. Also not bad with battle ram. Also not bad with like really anything inside a graveyard, because if you can keep it alive, it counters the graveyard well. So Hill will be interesting. Yeah. Of course, with a lot of lightning running around right now, it can be dangerous to run with three musketeers because you just have a dead card at that point, but I still really like it.
Yeah, I feel like heal it almost makes you think like, is there a heal meta that hasn't been uncovered yet? You know, like, is there some sort of a minion battle ram deck or something like forget Three Musketeers, forget Lavaloon.
True.
Like those are the two obvious archetypes that heal kind of naturally fits in with. But like, is there something else, you know, that will emerge? You know, it generally takes quite a while for the top players to kind of, you know, play test or whatever, and then like a new kind of meta or a new sub archetype kind of evolves from there, it feels like.
Yeah, for sure. I do like heal though, because in a lot of ways it's like freeze, and freeze is like really one-dimensional, and that's why it's not used. But heal also has defensive capabilities, especially when there's like poison and fireball being meta. So I like what they did with heal. Like, a lot of people heard the concept, and regardless of where its power is right now, it's not a card that breaks the game like people thought it would. So I like that a lot. Like, they were really scared, and rightfully so, that it would be a defensive mechanism, and instead it's more of an offensive card. So I've really liked how heal has been incorporated into the meta, even though we're not seeing it too much just yet.
I'm a little scared every time they release a card like that. Like, I remember being very worried about Clone, about just any new effect. I'm like, oh, this is going to break the game. It's over. Yeah, it's all over.
Well, how about when they released Miner? It was just like, what? You can place it anywhere?
Yeah.
I was a little bit too busy just taking advantage of people at that time who didn't have Miner to really cry tears over it. But,
I was one of those people who didn't have Miner.
When Miner first came out, didn't people think it was trash? I want to say
maybe for a couple
for a little bit. Okay.
But I do remember like that it was just so bizarre because it was the first card you could place. First troop you can place on the other side of the map. It's just like, whoa, is this?
Or at least the first tanky kind of thing is a barrel.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
It's interesting with new cards because like when Graveyard first came out too, people didn't like it that much. They were kind of like, what is this garbage? It keeps on activating the King Tower when I put it on the tower, or they were like, it's just skeletons. They die so easy. And then at King's Cup, that was like the first place where people saw it have success. I used it a lot and had success with it. In a Golem deck though, so I went like super tanky with it, and that kind of evolved into Giant. Yarn was right on with Freeze in his deck, and that became meta for a while. That was really interesting. But yeah, it's kind of cool to look back at the meta and see how these cards that are like brand new kind of evolve. And it's speaking to your point earlier, it's really cool to see decks and cards emerge that nothing changes, but they work better within a certain meta, like Knight, for example, to where Knight is like the same as it's always been, but no one used to use it. Like, Mini P.E.K.K.A was a better Knight, but now that damage is less needed, and like a small tanky unit that can distract on defense is more necessary, and it counters Graveyard, and it counters all these new cards. So it's cool to see how the meta evolves, even when there aren't balance changes.
I have a card idea. You want to hear it? I just thought of it.
Yeah.
And I never do this stupid card ideas, but hey, bear with me. It's called Paladin. Okay.
I'm on board already. I don't care what the rest of it is.
He's on a horse. He costs a little. It had to be pricey, like 5 or 6. He's a legendary card, and he has the same mechanic as far as Lumberjack dropping Rage, but he drops Heal when he dies.
Oh, I
that's
love
cool.
it. It's thematic with Paladin too for
Yes,
any
right.
D&D players out there and stuff. That's amazing.
That, you know,
Supercell, are you listening?
yeah, that could be a rework for Dark Prince because he's garbage.
Dark Prince should drop something too when he dies, something even cooler.
Rage.
Yeah.
No, that's Lumberjack. Never mind.
Anything.
What if the Dark Prince dropped like a little guard's shield for everything that was in the general area?
That'd be cool. And
Yeah,
I mean,
or a fast-acting poison, like a 2-tick poison.
I mean,
or something.
anything to make him viable. I mean, Prince, at least it's like, okay, well, he's not bad in some beatdown decks, but Dark Prince is like, he's good in nothing. So
I wonder why why have they not just ticked up his damage, his health a little bit? I mean, something.
I think
it seems like he deserves something.
they've done really small stuff, but I mean, at certain points, it's like any card can be viable if you change the numbers, but sometimes it's like, do we want that card to be viable? So they just leave it alone, kind of like Bomb Tower. Like if that card was good as it was at one point early in the game, it just becomes oppressive. So there's certain cards.
Yeah, it becomes a kind of a stalemate.
Yeah, there's certain cards that you don't want to touch. Like I don't know that a good witch. I don't think any good spawners should be a thing. I don't know. Those are just really stale.
I don't want Bowler or Executioner to get any better. If they get worse, I'm fine with that, but any better and they can be that sort of thing where they're controlling the entire lane, especially along with Tornado. It just gets impossible to make it to a tower.
I feel like they're good right now. I feel like they're powerful, but not like annoyingly powerful, and they're not super popular. If they're popular, but not like
it's really they're really the only time they're like super popular is not in just any normal deck. It's in Tornado decks. So I see pro players complain a lot about Tornado now too, but it's because everyone at that tier of play knows how to use Tornado down to like exact placements like I do. Like I 100% of the time know how to activate the King Tower with anything that can activate the King Tower. And I know how to like completely stop a Goblin Barrel from doing any damage based on like whatever placement you use. So I think as you get to the top tier play, especially a card like Tornado, to where it really took a lot of people to figure it out, along with buffs, it becomes a really good card at top of ladder and at top of like challenge meta and everything. But I think also pro players complain about anything that they lose to. So same as the average player though on ladder. So
true. Do you guys think one thing that I'm kind of worried about right now is like Spear Goblins and Goblins, like with Goblin Gang, like forget about it. Like how often do you see those ran? Do you think it's just a lower arena card now? Or do you think, is that something that Supercell should be worried about? Because like who the heck runs Goblins anymore, right? I mean, very rarely, or Spear Goblins especially. It's just like, why the heck would you run Spear Goblins?
Yeah, so here's my take on that. Like, you could make the case that with cards that are combined into other cards, like Musketeer versus Three Musketeer, you could make a case that like going for a cheaper, more cycly kind of deck, you'd want to go with the cheaper card. But with Goblin Gang, it's two elixir versus 3 elixir. There's really a marginal difference. Yeah. So you're right. In what situation would you rather carry Spear Goblins or regular Goblins? I've seen them a little bit on ladder, but mostly they pretty much disappeared since Goblin Gang has come out. I know at least in the decks that I'm playing, it's always Goblin Gang versus anything else, even Skarmy a lot these days.
I mean, that tends to happen in every game. Like in every game is going to be a graveyard of cards that don't see any play at all. Like in League of Legends, there are some champions that never see play at all. And I think it's kind of unavoidable because over time you add new cards, they're kind of going to take the niches of old cards, and then it's going to be hard to choose like the older, I guess, old-fashioned ones compared to the new one, which is probably improved.
I think that's fair. There's power creep in any game.
Yeah, and
it's just trying to manage it.
Yeah, and also as we can see, like as the game goes on, you create these cards that they're not just a standard ranged attacker that does ... DPS or whatever, like insert decent number. You get cards like Electro Wiz to where you start stacking effects onto cards that do similar jobs, but those effects make them just superior. Kind of like why you see Electro Wiz a lot more you see Musketeer. Despite her slightly longer range, the ability to stun a troop is really valuable. So yeah, there is power creep, and as the game progresses, new cards are going to become more unique and in turn typically more useful, because what game wants to introduce a card that just sucks? and if it does suck, they buff it, and then it becomes part of the meta. So I can understand that, but there are certain cards that are still kind of unique that they've left by the wayside. Like I could care less if they change Bomber or Bomb Tower, but I don't know. Not perhaps give her a number buff, but like Witch, for example, is pretty unique. So maybe if they like changed her in some way, I definitely think there's opportunities for reworks within cards that are currently here, and we haven't really seen them do like hard reworks up to this point. Some slight like effect changes, but I'd be interested to see them do something like League of Legends does with old crappy champions, to where they actually like reinvent the card and make it something new and useful.
All right, now I have an idea for a card coming up for Ash's turn. So it's a spell that makes the entire field where you place it immune to all other spells. So if you like a Witch out there and then you expect your opponent to lightning it, you can put the spell on top of it and it'll make it immune to all.
Oh my god, that would be awesome.
Shield spell. Yeah.
You know, you could kind of work, if anybody knows Hearthstone, there's something in Hearthstone called Secrets where they can tell you've played something, but they don't know what it is. It would kind of be, you could kind of do something like that where you introduce spells into the game that have some trigger effect. I'm thinking like Clash of Clans has like spring traps and things like that. Introducing things like those in the game where there's a secret that pops up, you know there's something back there, but is it like a protection secret? Is it a spring trap that they put somewhere on their side of the map that's going to toss your giant out of the arena?
Yeah.
Like there would be kind of cool stuff like that you could play.
You know
what
what would be cool if they did spring trap and like they have miner and you have to guess where they're going to put miner like 10 seconds ahead of time. And then if they put it on it, the miner's dead. That'd be funny. But I really like what Clyde said, like a spell that creates like a null area to where if someone places like poison on top of it, the area within like the circle is immune and like those troops can't be hurt. But of course it would need like, I don't know, like it would only last for 3 seconds or maybe less. And you have to do it reactionary because obviously versus lightning. And then maybe it doesn't work on towers, but it works on your troops. I think that'd be like a really cool idea, because that would absolutely, if it was good enough, that would like change the game in like a better way, because it would be more skill oriented. That would be a really a beloved card of like all top players.
It would promote like better gameplay, and it's not just whoever's lucky to draw.
Very reactive card, you know.
I think that's good. I think cards with high skill caps are what you need for a game to be top tier, because when you have a card like what Clyde just proposed, you create these scenarios within like top level gameplay where it becomes less about, oh, he did that specific placement that he had memorized for a certain card, and that's like, okay, yeah, it's kind of cool, good for him. But if you create these cards that are innately high skill cap, you can really see the difference in how good a top player is compared to the average player, and that as an audience, that gives you something that you can be like wow about, in the same way that logging a goblin gang before the goblin gang is placed, like a predictive spell, in the same way that's really cool.
Yeah, dynamic, dynamic cards are really cool, you know?
Yeah.
I know you OJ and discussed this on your channel the other day, Ash, but cards like Graveyard that have some kind of RNG component to them, I actually kind of disagree with him in the sense that I think it's bad that Graveyard is the only card that is really RNG dependent in the game right now. But they could introduce a few more cards that had some small random component to it, because I think that keeps things in the game fresh. If even for pro players who, if you're forced to respond to something like Graveyard, maybe there's an optimal placement that's not optimal every single time, depending on the different where the skeletons are spawning and things like that. If there were more cards like that that had just a little bit of variability, I think that would really shake the game up in an interesting way.
Yeah, that's such a it's such a polarizing topic, the RNG stuff, but like it's a weird one, because it's one that I kind of find myself on the fence on, to be honest with you. Like, I think you can make a good point either way, you know? So I'd like to sit here and be like, yeah, you know what? This is what I really, but I really feel like I could play devil's advocate on either side of the argument. So it's just not something I'm super passionate about, I guess, I guess you need a better, you need to be a game designer by nature to actually have strong opinions on that, or like a top player, I guess, because I don't really have a strong, I can see both sides of the argument, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I can see both sides. I lean towards the side that thinks RNG or Graveyard shouldn't be RNG focused, just because it can kind of, you can play it the same way, And one time it can do 1,000 damage, one time it can do 1,500, and that can suck both as a graveyard user and as someone that's defending graveyard, because maybe you defend it the same way and you take way more damage, or maybe as a graveyard user you play it and it does way less damage than it should. So that's why I'm opposed to it, and I like if you do the exact same thing twice, defending or attacking, you should get the same result in my opinion. Unless they took it in a different direction to where a lot of things are RNG based, but that's one of the things I dislike about Hearthstone. So I wouldn't like.
That's the tricky thing too, is you don't want to introduce too much RNG because then you've just got the opposite problem where there's so much luck. But having a little bit of luck or having a little bit of variability and randomness in a game, I think is good. I would agree with Yarn though. Right now, with Graveyard being the only kind of variable RNG dependent card, it's probably better to take it out of competitions just because it's such a sticking out like a sore thumb kind of card.
Yeah, you need consistency, I believe.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, both points can be made. I don't think RNG, Graveyard being in the game, like, it doesn't like visibly upset me when I see it do well or do bad in a match, but I just do think that's like a quality of life change that would be nice one way or the other.
Yeah, do you guys think what do you think of like my proposal? I'm sure it's not mine originally, but it just like adding a certain set of spawns, maybe 4 different spawns of the graveyard, and then randomly choosing one of those 4 spawns so people can probably identify based on where the first skeleton spawns, what spawn pattern it's using, and then that will preserve some bit of randomness to the card, but at the same time some predictability for people who want to go ahead and memorize exactly what variation they're getting.
I would like that, because it's not like something that would be. Of course, you can get it down to an exact science after a while, but I think that adds skill. Like, that adds something that you have to memorize and you have to think and do on a split-second decision. Or you can just play it where you've always played it and then risk not getting it. But I think that's better in the current situation. Yeah. I would like that change.
Yeah.
It sounds good to me. I mean, honestly, Graveyard never bothered me that much when I was playing it. I see people frustrated by it, but I really rarely ever played Graveyard, but even defending against it, I didn't feel too badly when, it wouldn't show up exactly 100% of the game, because I was like, okay, at least there's something different now. Like, sometimes I would defend better, sometimes I would defend worse, and I don't mind a little bit of luck in the game.
All right, next up, we've got some Q&A from Twitter. Guys, thank you for sending in your questions, and again, next week, we're going to do this again. Send in your questions, and we'll have our esteemed guests here answer them for you. First question from Matthew on Twitter, or Muthja, who is a fantastic tournament player. Shout out to him. How would the balloon nerf affect the current meta? So he's talking about post this last nerf where they changed the bomb speed timer. He's talking about a potential future nerf like lower health, maybe a hit speed decrease, something like that. How do you think that would affect the current meta, especially with Lava Loon being such a big, powerful part of the meta right now?
I think that Balloon nerf, like, Balloon's one of the only cards keeping air troops, I guess, honest. Like, without it, I don't think Lava Hound would be as strong. I don't think you need to carry as much air defense, because people are typically carrying like 2 or 3 now. I think if Balloon got nerfed, you probably only need to carry 2 or less. So I think if it is nerfed, it's going to be a very ground-focused meta, which could be bad because you feel like everybody's countering you. You feel like you're playing a ground deck and somebody's playing bowler and they're like, oh, he counters my deck. But they're just countering the meta, which probably is more ground focused.
I agree with Clyde. I think that it doesn't need another nerf. It's a powerful card, but you got to remember that Balloon sucked for like 6 months, in the game. And then when it was better, it opened up a whole new, even though everybody hates Lava Loon, you got to think about just Balloon users too, or Giant Loon, or, Loon Cycle or Loon Freeze. Like, if you nerf the Balloon anymore, even though it was debatable whether it was a nerf or not, but I don't think that Balloon is a problem at all in the game. I think that Lava Loon is annoying. I hate going against it, but at the same time, I don't think it's undefendable, So it's just, I agree.
Yeah, I'm on the same page to where Lava Loon is absolutely, or air in general is something that you have to keep in the meta to keep players honest, because otherwise you're literally going to get people that are running decks that are like Bar Putt Bowler, If you
Scarn.
yeah, you're literally just gonna run into people that stack their and they'll throw in like a miner or a graveyard. Like literally they'll just stack their defenses against ground troops, and then they'll have no air targeting troops in their decks, or maybe like one, like Electro Wizard or something, because they get in the situation to where you're not punished by having ground only targeting units, and that makes you able to just stack these ground defenses. The only thing I would say is if you really deem Loon such an issue that people just absolutely hate it, which I don't think is the case, especially because I do think that was a nerf, because the fact that it doesn't instantly kill everything underneath it is a pretty big buff, because like what if archers kill a balloon and they get like 10 more shots off now because of the bomb timer. So I think it's a good thing that the change they made, and I think that puts it in line more so. Also, with so much execution tornado now, it's like lava balloons is already being seen a little bit less because that counters it so well. But I think if you did want to go forward with the balloon nerf, I think you would have to buff Lava Hound and other air troops, because otherwise everyone is going to stack ground. But I don't think balloons should be nerfed too hard. I think if anything, honestly, you can buff other air stuff, because you don't see air that often. I don't know if there's like an easy way to buff like minions or minion horde, but I could see them getting a little bit of a buff. Honestly, I wouldn't hate Mega.
Please.
I mean,
please, Super.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind. Like I like how heal works with them. Actually, it can be good sometimes, but I think Mega Minion was over nerfed back in the day, and you really don't see it that much anymore. Other than sometimes in Lava Loon. But yeah, I think bringing more air troops into the game, if you were gonna nerf Balloon, would be the way to go. But as it is, I don't think Balloon's too big of an issue anymore. I do like, people complain, they're like, oh, you don't nerf them hard enough, or with RG and E-Barbs too for like ladder players. But I like the approach of changing things a little bit and seeing how it shakes out, because little changes do make a big difference. And if you over nerf a card, you make it useless. So
smart. And wait till you see bats, man.
Dude,
bats.
Dude, I've watched. I want to see them. I think those would be really cool. Like one Elixir Skeletons, we'll see like cycle decks with just 3 cycle cards. That'll be insane. With 3 like 2
I think
cards.
I'm excited for bats.
Yeah. I'm a little worried kind of for the future of CR, in the sense that if they release too many air troops, when do you get to the point where there's so many good air troops, or so many versatile air troops, that you can build kind of all air decks, and then you've got the opposite problem, where instead of Barb Hut Bowler, you've got Lava Hound, Balloon, Minion Horde, Bats, etc., Mega Minion, whatever. You know?
I will say,
do you think that's a problem?
I'll say no, because the innate problem with that would be you're going to run into decks that, unless you have like the best version of Mega Minion to where it just chunks things so hard that it kills them, you're gonna run into the problem where you don't have distract troops, and cards like Hog, cards like Giant and Golem, you're gonna have no way of stopping them, and they'll just run right through underneath everything, and then they'll just sit in a poison, and everything will die around them, and they'll get the tower.
And think about it too, like even if you're rolling with an all air deck with like bats and let's say they release another new card on top of that, and Lava Loon and Baby Dragon, I mean, you can still be shut down by an Inferno Tower, Tornado, and Executioner. You know, like I think people will just probably carry more solid air counters if it ever moves too far in that direction, maybe. You know. But it's definitely, it must be a nightmare adding like tons of new cards to a game like this. You know, always so many things to think about.
The ever demanding players. We want new cards. We want them now, but we don't want them to be unbalanced.
You know, that's a perfect segue to our next question from Hobson on CR, old friend of mine. Thank you, Hobson. What do you guys think of the spread out card releases that they're doing now? Especially this latest one, it seems like they announced the cards very early, but they're waiting for, I don't know if they're waiting for the meta to kind of to take shape before releasing the next cards, but they seem to have been spacing them out a lot more. What do you think of that strategy?
Actually, I thought the 2-week one where they were releasing a new one every 2 weeks was way too often. You wouldn't let the card get, adjusted to the meta first. Like, it took people forever to learn how to play Graveyard. And it was a good thing that it was the last one of those series of cards that got released, because it took a while for the meta to adjust. So I think 2 weeks is too early. I like it a little longer, like 3 weeks to a month.
I think that this is not like 100% concrete, but I think what they did was instead of changed it from every 2 weeks or every 3 weeks or whatever it was, I think now they're just drawing it out so that the fourth card is released when they're ready to introduce new cards rather than having a long 2 month wait or whatever between the next update. So I would anticipate getting Bats or Night Witch in the next week or two or whatever, 3 weeks, I don't know. And then once we get that, we'll get the other one in another 3 weeks, and then we'll get introduced. The day we get our last card, I think we'll probably get introduced to all the next new cards, you know? That way it's basically filling the gap perfectly between updates. That's just my take on why they did it, along with letting people level them up.
Yeah, I like that. I feel like that gives people something to look forward to, and it also doesn't leave us in an executioner situation to where it's forced to come out at a certain time, and then when it does come out, it has 50 bugs. Like the axe is flying off the field. There's a bug that it stuns troops and resets their animations that makes it strong, but it wasn't intended. That type of stuff. I think Supercell and Clash Royale developers should just ignore the fans that try to rush them. If there's no point in pushing out an unfinished product, you should release it when you're ready. And then I like that of releasing it when you're ready to introduce new cards. I think that's absolutely the way to go about it. I think, yeah, obviously you want to get it out on a timely manner so that people don't get too angry about it coming out super late, but don't release an unfinished product. So I'm fine with that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I tend to agree with all you guys. 2 weeks was a little too soon, but having them just kind of wait for the meta to take shape, however long that takes, be it 3 weeks or a month or even more, I'm fine with that. You know, as long as the game is staying fresh and the meta is continually changing, yeah, you know, let it depend on the circumstances, pretty much.
Compared to how they used to do it, where they released like 4 cards on one day, like it was exciting, but I like this better. And I think I'm in the minority. You guys sound like you agree too, but like I think the community loved those big days. But like I like being able to have one card. It's nice that they have a challenge with every new card now. We get to introduce ourselves to the card. We get to, you know, level it up faster by getting it in the special challenge. Like I like the process they have now a lot.
And people can focus on that one card for a period of time. They're not like the like you said, it was exciting for 4 cards to come out at once, but at the same time it was like nobody knew what they were playing against or what they were playing with, and it's chaos for fun chaos sometimes, but chaos for a short period of time. I definitely like the staggered card releases a lot better.
Yeah, and you kind of identify out of the 4 which 2 or 3 are terrible, and you just don't use those. So I think it's better when they do it one at a time, because even if the card is terrible, everyone's testing it out, and at least you'll have an idea of what that card is capable of, as opposed to maybe this card sticks around for like a month and then it gets buffed and you're like, oh, I don't really know how to play this card, and it's been around because it was garbage. So I think that's cool. The way they're doing it right now is perfect. I love that they do challenges, because what's the worth of a card to the average player if they can't use it on ladder? So it's good to let them at least get it to tournament standard. And I really like how they've gone about their card release process. I think they've improved over time, and as much as the community likes them to give any game developer crap, I think they've done a really good job, and I think they've learned as the game has grown. So
going off of that kind of side question, do you like the fact that they seem to have in recent card releases it seems like they're starting with a lower power level and anticipating that it won't be quite good enough and then buffing it from there, versus, you know, say the Mega Minion release where everybody right away was like, oh my god, this card's amazing, let's put it in every deck. Do you like the way they're doing it now, where things tend to be a little bit underpowered at first and testing things out?
That's the way I prefer it, at least. Like with Elite Barbarians, that's the thing that comes to mind. When they released it, it was pretty bad, and then they realized that, and then they buffed it to like where it became borderline OP. And I just thought if they released it like that, then, you know, the community all hell would have broke loose, because they were like, this card is OP. Let's max this out right now. And then after they got nerfed again, they'd be like, oh wow, like they got us. Like now we have this level 11 card that is useless.
I think that they, believe it or not, even though it doesn't seem this way necessarily, I'm pretty sure that they want cards to be strong when they're released, because they want there to be hype and people to be excited about them. Obviously, they don't want them to be too strong. But I remember mentioning this to the same exact question that you asked, Nate. Basically, like, I think I asked the designer or the community manager the same question, like, "Oh, I really like what you're doing about making the cards not so strong," and then they were like, "Oh no, we try to make them strong," and I was like, "Oh, all right." Maybe it's just anecdotal that you tend to remember the ones that were buffed afterwards, or maybe I don't know. But that's what they told me.
That's true. They could just be going through a streak where they seem most of them seemed underpowered at first. You know?
I mean, and there's something to be said about people who spend hours and hours tweaking and adjusting and making a card. They kind of probably get a grasp of its power level, I would say. As much as people like say, "Oh, Supercell, you don't play your own game," and whatever with any, and people say that with any game developer, it's just expected, I guess, at this point. But I think they start to realize where a card will work and how it functions, and so their perceived level of its power is probably higher than that of the communities, because the community hasn't seen this card until the day it's released, and it takes them weeks to play it and to understand how it should be used. Like when Bandit first came out, everyone thought it sucked, and now while it's not OP by any means, it is good, and it works within certain decks pretty well, especially like within minor and other battle ram decks and stuff. And it has a lot of it has a defined role to where if it gets to tower, it's going to do a lot of damage. So I think they did a really good job with that card. And
same thing with battle ram, because battle ram wasn't buffed and now it's everywhere. And same thing with oh geez, what the heck was it? I just saw on the tip of my tongue. I forget.
Goblin Gang.
That would be
Goblin Gang too. Ice Golem I was thinking of. Ice Golem when it was released, no one used. You know, they're like Ice Golem.
And then they had to nerf it because it was too good. They did buff it a tiny bit, but and now
Killings and
I liked that card. They changed it, but and Goblin Gang too. People were like, I said this. I was like, they're combining two crappy cards. I think it's still gonna suck. But just the fact of putting goblins together, which are already a decent card, and then getting spear goblins as well. It's not even so much that the DPS is nice. It's just the fact that it's like a Skarmy that's spread out that you can't instantly kill. It just serves.
It's not zappable.
Yeah, it serves so well as. It serves really, really, really well as a distract troop, and it actually also does good damage to tank. So it's like a 2-for-1 card.
It doubles as cheap air defense. You know, with the spear goblins in the back. I mean, I was hoping Goblin Gang would be good. I suspected it would be bad, but I've been pleasantly surprised so far.
Yeah. Just the ability. I think a really big thing is that they're not all stacked up inside one spot like a goblin or a spear gob are. They're spread out, and it works so much better because it takes that much longer to kill them with a log. It takes that much longer for a poison to kill the back because maybe the spear gobs are still out of the radius, and it just works really well. And it's a pretty good card. Yeah, like we were saying earlier though, maybe gobs and spear gobs could. I don't know how you nerf. Another thing is when you combine two cards, how do you buff the single cards without buffing the one that's already good? Yeah, because you can't just change the stats of single goblins to be better than that of the goblins inside a Goblin Gang. But overall, I think they did.
It's like skeletons.
It's like making skeletons better than skeleton army. I guess I don't know the way they did it, which they changed the numbers, but adding another spear gob, that'd be weird.
Skeletons are so strong though, but you can't it would be nice to buff which skeletons.
Yeah, it's like you can't.
You choose.
Maybe they need mega skeletons, super skeletons.
God, no, elite skeletons.
Not like giant skeleton level, but just something
guards.
Hating
on guards.
What are guards? What are those? I haven't seen. I legit haven't seen a guards in so long.
New card.
They were good in the poison meta, which is hilarious because poison hard counters them. But they were so good against mini. They were so good against mini P.E.K.K.A. and minor.
Mini P.E.K.K.A.
Yeah.
Mini P.E.K.K.A. What's that?
There was a lot of princes around at that
I don't
time
know.
too, I think. Yeah. Oh man, I miss mini P.E.K.K.A.
I just
so much.
erased mini P.E.K.K.A. It gives me bad memories.
I know, right? That was the pancakes.
Dude.
Right?
I also don't eat pancakes anymore.
Aw, man, they ruined it for you.
Dude, they were like dry. They almost made me gag multiple times. It's over. I'll eat waffles just because they look different.
All right, let's hop into our next question from Twitter. This is Clash with Yash. Clash with Yash. Holla at Yash on Twitter.
Sounds like a hater. Sounds like
yeah,
a
or a big fan. He might just be your biggest fan.
Yeah.
You never know.
Maybe.
Do you feel Supercell promotes beatdown strategies a bit too much? If they only nerf defensive cards, control strategies will slowly die out, and after one more year, the strongest decks would only be beatdown decks. I think he's specifically talking about kind of big tank beatdown decks.
Yeah, Golem and Lava Loon.
Do you think Supercell kind of, at least consciously or unconsciously, do they favor those beatdown strategies a little too much?
I mean, I think maybe subconsciously, because it's gonna be more fun to see more damage being done. Like nobody wants to see 3 minutes of people defending and only damage getting done. I'd rather see like a 3-minute game where people are going back and forth at it, and that's more entertaining in my eyes. I don't know if they do it on purpose, but I think they're trying to achieve a nice balance with it.
I agree. I don't think they're doing it. I don't think they're promoting beatdown, honestly, because you think about it, like all the beatdown cards, save for Lava Hound, which was introduced relatively early after after beta was over, they haven't really introduced any new beatdown cards unless I'm totally missing something. I think they introduce a really nice versatile range of cards that really help to benefit as many metas, or as many archetypes rather, as they can. I think they do a pretty good job. I think that beatdown's strong, but I think that they have gone public before saying that they do have a strong bias towards offense, like Clyde said. So anything that they can do to promote offense rather than defense, I think they're all about.
So I was going to say, maybe this is a controversial opinion on my part, but I have been arguing for a long time that they need more strong offensive options. And I don't mean slow options like Golem, Lava Hound, even Giant to some extent, but things like Elite Barbs that were really legitimately scary, potentially tower dropping offensive options. You need cards like that. So I think they do a good job balancing the 3 main archetypes, balance, siege, and control. Where I feel like they could use some work is promoting more punish cards like E-Barbs, like Quick Hog, Those seem so easy to defend sometimes, and especially E-Barbs just got nerfed again. Does anybody agree with me there, or am I all on an island by myself?
I don't. So I understand the Elite Barb nerf, and that's obviously it was because they were common. If Elite Barbs had been a rare or an epic, and it was more focused around tournament standard, I think they would have been left alone. But I do think they were broken when they were first buffed. But tuning them down a little bit, I could see them being still good for the game. I understand. I don't think they promote beatdown too hard because, if that was true, there'd be millions of beatdown decks. Really, at any given time, there's like 2 to 4 beatdown decks that are good, but they're not really oppressive. What gets really oppressive is to where you have minor control, like you did at one point where Poison was broken, to where, yeah, people ran Goizen, but if you actually looked at the top of like 15Ks, literally every single one was won by Minor Poison. It was won by really, really good players, and they would literally only play Minor Poison because Inferno Tower could just absolutely shut down any push. When you get these, even with Poison like slowing it back then, if you get to the point to where defensive options are too strong, kind of like what Nader was saying, is you get Inferno Towers to where every push is shut down so easily from beatdown, and then you just go in with minor, and you're making inefficient trades to when you minor poison a tower, because like you minor poison a tower, that's a 7 elixir push, your opponent plays guards, they stop some of the damage, but you still end up winning even though you're taking -4 trades consistently, because you are able to shut down 10 elixir pushes with just Inferno Tower plus like Zap or something. And when you get these defensive options to be too strong, you create a game to where you just have to chuck spells at each other's towers along with like minor, which essentially might as well be a
sort of guaranteed.
Yeah,
damage.
so you just get guaranteed damage, and the one who wins is the one who does more chip over time, which is, it gets really boring. I think control is good, and I think control's in a good place right now, to where beatdown can punish it if it's able to build up a push. But I think as control, you should be forced to make your opponent spread their elixir thin by quickly doing opposite lane pushes with these punish cards, that type of thing, like you were saying. Not so much to where you're winning because you shut down every single push your opponent does. Like if a golem player is able to gather up elixir, they should always get damage because their push takes 45 seconds from the back of the arena to get to the tower. Like they should get damage. It'll just be a matter of whether their elixir gets spread thin or not, and whether they're able to use their spells effectively. So I think it's a good thing that they promote Beatdown. I don't think they overly do it right now. Like I think the meta's in a good place. Everything's pretty balanced at the moment, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think that I think that Elite Barbs, like Colton said, I think it was more of a problem about the commons, them being a common win condition, which I think was a mistake. And I think they realized that.
They admitted that in their own podcast, right?
Yeah,
they did.
That it was a game economy problem and not a power level problem.
Exactly. I don't personally, I mean, I'm in the minority right there with you, Nate. I don't think that, I think that I really get happy when I see Elite Barbs even before, granted, you know, I mean, I wasn't grinding out in ladder in the 3000s where they were killing everybody. True. But when I saw them, like I figured, pretty easy counter, because they're a high risk but a high reward, but also a high risk card. Because they cost 6 elixir. So if you can kite them, or if you can just drop a knight and an ice spirit, you're good. I like those cards because they're easy to pick up a positive elixir trade-off, if you defend well.
Yeah, so. Just like knight. I mean, just skeletons or knight plus any cheap troop behind them, and it's like it's dead. So I like when I see Elite Barbs as well. But I mean, yeah, it's the fact that they're common, really.
I mean, I posted on Twitter right after the latest nerf, because obviously none of us are kind of at that level where Elite Barbs are everywhere. I posted that I think I looked through my battle log and it was like 3 or 4 out of the last 25. And the guys who responded to me said, "Oh, it's like 20 of mine, that have Elite Barbs in the enemy's deck."
Yeah.
So yeah, it really is a big problem, and maybe even more so than RG was, because RG you have to kind of build your whole deck around. E-Barbs go in a lot of different decks, including RG.
Yeah, and kind of within like of course. My Twitter feed and a lot of our Twitter feeds are going to be filled with pro players, and we exist within like our own bubble because we are at the top of the game. Not trying to be like cocky or anything, but we are at the top of the game. We play within a different meta, so to speak, because we aren't worried about levels as much. A bunch of the best players have max accounts. They play in challenges. They play in leagues that are done at tournament standards, and they don't understand how oppressive an over-leveled card can be. So they get mad when they see changes that don't make any sense to them. But you have to remember that Supercell is a company, and they have to cater to the majority of their audience, which is the casual, or not necessarily casual, but the players that aren't at the top of the game, that aren't playing on max accounts, that are playing the average player probably like 3,000, 4,000 trophies, and they see a lot of Elite Barbs, and it drives them insane. It makes them not want to play the game. So it's something that Supercell as a company has to address, because otherwise they're neglecting the majority of their audience. So I completely understand the changes with RG and Elite Barbs. Of course, they don't make any sense in like my perspective, but I do understand like why they would need to make the change. So
I would hope that because they admitted in their podcast that this was a problem with game economy and rarities, I would hope that because they couldn't address it now and they went for this more simplified version of just nerfing the cards again, I hope that in the future they do something that's a little more groundbreaking, that maybe takes a little more work to retool the economy a little bit. I know that we talked about the other day, they already kind of stopped releasing common win condition cards.
That's good. Yeah.
Yeah, so they need to keep that up, and then also maybe do something about RG and E-Barbs, because I don't want to see either of them lost from the game. I love Elite Barbs, obviously. I don't really play RG, but I think it deserves a space in the game. You know.
I went to an anti-bullying campaign to Helsinki, and we're lucky enough to meet like a bunch of really cool youths from Great Britain, and they had the opportunity to ask a Q&A to one person representing each of the Supercell games. And they asked a lot of great questions. And then we got a chance to ask a question as well, content creators, if we wanted to. And I asked each member from each of the 4 games, what is your number one you know, because they love, just in a Supercell, they love challenges and stuff like that, and they love to overcome them. That's what they thrive on. So I said, what is your number one challenge right now inside all of your games respectively? You know, like, what is that before you go to sleep at night and your head hits the pillow? What are you thinking about? And of course, Stefu, the designer for Clash Royale, said 2 words: Royal Giant. So it's definitely on his mind.
Yeah. Yeah, and like within YouTube videos, it's you'll look and you still see people thought it was like a pat on the back. They still see those cards as problems. So it'll be interesting to see how they address it in the future if they leave it alone. Which
I think they need to do something that's kind of maybe in the design process that distinguishes between power level and, I don't even know what to call it, but like an annoyance level. How much does it feel annoying to lose to a certain thing, you know?
I just think people are annoyed by anything they lose to.
People are going to complain. Yeah,
True,
people are
right?
going to complain about
Like,
anything that they
I don't know,
lose to,
if Witch was seen 18 out of 20 games and it was responsible for most of their losses, they would hate it just as much. I mean, any card that you lose to a lot is going to become hated. So
even Hog, which I feel like Hog is so inoffensive, but even when it's powerful,
yeah,
people are
I've seen
complaining,
people
"You're Hog."
because it's used on ladder. I've seen people complain about Hog, and I'm like, what? That's like the easiest card to counter for like me, really, because it's like I run Tornado in a bunch of my decks. It's like Hog just gets
Hog
gets abused. You activate King Tower, and then you just pull it into the middle of the map for the rest of the game. You just watch it die without doing anything.
Yeah, pretty much any. I'm Colton. I'm sure you can empathize with this, but pretty much no matter what type of deck I spotlight, there'll be a small peanut gallery of haters. You know, of no skill haters. Oh, Expo's a no skill deck. Lavaloon's a no skill deck. Spellbait's a no skill deck. Hog's a no skill. Like everything, you know, literally everything.
You would have loved to seen the comments after I did well at King's Cup. Oh my God. Every comment section I read, no skill, and same happened to Backstab when he won. It's like
because of Graveyard, because of Graveyard.
Yeah, and it's like when I played and people were like, "You're playing." Someone said like, "You play cookie cutter decks, like those are meta decks," and I'm like, "No one was." Graveyard literally just came out. I just made this deck. No one's played this, and then my other deck was like Giant Lightning with Barbs. Like that wasn't something anyone else was running. Like my decks were pretty relatively my own creations, and
no one's happy unless you're winning big tournaments with like giant skeleton or something.
Tried that.
Sure.
Yeah, should just let me win with Inferno Dragon.
You got close. I was heartbroken for you when you against Pat.
Yeah, we were all rooting for the Inferno Dragon there. I think.
Thought he had it, but you know, I mean, for real. I mean, people are always going to complain about things they're passionate about, and that can be seen as a good thing if you like to be a positive person. So. I mean, in my comment sections, I'm just happy when they insult something that isn't me. So I take it as a positive.
I saw one of the, I'm not going to name names, but one of the best players in this game, anybody would agree with this, complaining that bait decks were no skill. And I'm thinking, those are kind of like, you have to know card rotation, you have to be paying attention to Elixir, you have to be, those are bait some of the
most hate out of all my videos.
Yeah. I don't understand it because to me, at least, those seem like some of the clearly you got to be kind of skillful to play a bait deck, right?
Yeah.
That's because people who don't play them well, they look at these videos and they're like, all they do is throw Goblin Barrel, you know.
And when my log just happens to be out of rotation.
Yeah.
How did that happen? How did they know? Potentially it's because you used it on offense on like an Ice Spirit. I don't know. Yeah, it's like, I mean, I hate no skill arguments in general or blank insults about a certain deck. It's because every deck takes skill, and if you like are just such a hater on one deck, then build your deck to counter it, or play the deck yourself. It's like there's so many ways around it to where if you hate a certain deck, you can absolutely hard counter it if you really, really want to. And I think, in my opinion, that's why I try to build really well-rounded decks. And then if I lose like a matchup that maybe is 60-40 in their favor, then it's like, well, I should have played better. I think it's better, and if you're trying to improve as a player, it's better to blame yourself. There's no reason to assign yourself to a mentality that puts you in a place to where you see a card and you instantly think your chances of winning have gone down. Like, I don't think there's any reason to do that to yourself, and it just helps to be it helps your mental situation if you don't hate on things as well. So yeah, I think people just need to learn to accept what's good and then learn to counter it. That's the way to go around things.
There are certainly decks that are, I think there are certainly decks that are easier to learn and easier to, more forgiving of mediocre play and whatever. But there is no skill deck. There's people that play every no skill deck and play it way better than I can or anybody else,
Yeah, absolutely.
So speaking of decks, one of our questions from Twitter was, what do you think are the best decks for an F2P or ladder player specifically? Let's all just pick one. I like the mortar deck. It's simple, it's easy. It's
common win condition.
You got to practice. If you're not used to it, practice it quite a bit. It's a little bit of a skill curve if you're not used to Siege, but it is a powerful deck, and you can, like Colton said, level up that mortar and level up those archers, the knight. There's a lot of common cards in that deck, so you can work with that.
I see people with the mortar deck with like level 12 commons as high as, I don't know, top 1,000. If you know how to use that deck, you don't typically see it in top 200 a lot, but I mean, I'm not sure everyone just expects themselves to be top 200 right away. So, I mean, if you get really good at that deck, you can definitely stick around the top of the ladder, like top 1% even, if you get even close to maxing the deck. And it's not that hard because it's really common and rare dependent.
I would say the giant triple minions deck. I think that's only legendary it has is minor, and it's pretty safe winning condition against most decks, so that'd be my pick.
I've had a lot of trouble against that recently. That it might not be the perfect iteration of it yet. Maybe there's some more experimentation, but it feels like a really strong deck.
It is, yeah. I see that at top of ladder a decent amount too, and it doesn't have that many high level cards. Of course, you want to stray away from epics and legendaries in any deck on ladder as much as you can, unless the legendary is like log, and then you can kind of get away with it. But
yeah, I just watched, or I just recorded today, it's not out yet, but a video of Detective Heka, or I am Bren Chong, playing that deck, and he went undefeated while I was watching him, like 7 matches in a row, got to number 2 in the world, and I'm just like, okay, I'm going to try this deck. So that was the same giant, minor, triple minions, so that's a good choice. I think it depends on what arena you're in, obviously, as a free-to-play player, and what cards you have leveled up already. We have a guy in our clan, Fade, who's been running a Goblin
I
Barrel.
already know this one.
Yeah, like Goblin Barrel, Barbarians, Minion Horde, Hog Rider deck.
interesting.
Basically, those are like the 4 high cost cards, but he's still really, really good with it. And we have another guy in our clan, Arrow, who's been running the same exact deck since beta. It's a balloon freeze deck.
That would be an easy way to level up cards for sure.
yeah, and not only do you, if you stick with the same deck, or at least the same pieces, or the same win condition at least, and you ride it out through different balance changes, and not to say you can't switch things up, but like you'll really learn that thing backwards and forwards, and then you'll have like a real go-to. You'll understand every single mechanic and every single trick you can use against certain archetypes. So like for me, it's like a lot of it is just consistency with the same type of archetype, and just concentrating on leveling that up. And of course, everybody, I feel like, unless you're, absolutely top 1%, I feel like everybody is more comfortable with certain archetypes, certain win conditions. So, at least me, I roll with it. I accept that and I embrace it, and I try to use those and stay away from the other ones unless I want to get frustrated.
Yeah, I think for
play to your strengths.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
The easiest way to climb, and I always tell people this, is use decks that consist of almost entirely commons and rares, and then use the same deck over time, because the less you switch up a deck, the more you request the same cards, the quicker you are going to advance in ladder rank. And it kind of just, it compounds to where you're learning the same deck, the ins and out of that, you're using the same cards so they level up faster, and you're getting, and just those things come together, and that helps you gain trophies. Of course, it's fun to play everything, but if you're just absolutely looking to push, then you should use decks like that. And I mean, people complain about RG and Elite Barbs, but they're good on ladder for a reason, because they're easy to level up, same way with Mortar, and you can quickly get them to a level that inherently gives you an advantage because they do like their same job better because they are easier to level up and to get better stats than like a rare and epic that at tournament standard they would be equal because like a level 13 common is equal to a level 8 epic, but one's a lot easier to obtain than the other. So I don't know if you really. I think the best win conditions that you should build your deck around for ladder are typically RG, Mortar, Hog, Giant. Because those are commons and rares. They're really easy to level up, and then the support cards for those cards should be commons and rares as well. So, as much as you like hate on one thing or the other, I think those are the way to go. And just getting one deck down and memorizing it and knowing how to play it exactly right is how you should climb the easiest as a free-to-play player.
Yeah, that's actually a good segue to our next question, and I really want to get Clyde's 2 cents on this too, as maybe the most famous free-to-play player in the history of Clash Royale. But Gab or Warstitch on Twitter says, how do you compete in events as a free-to-play player?
Oh. Can't hear you.
Sorry about that. You want to start over or you want to continue?
Oh, my segue! No. Yeah, sure. So the next question from Gab or Warstitch on Twitter is
I may keep this in because it's funny.
Exactly. Super real. Rumham pulled that one on me too many times. Gab or Warstitch on Twitter asks, how do you compete in events as a free-to-play player? I'm particularly interested in hearing from you, Clyde, as maybe the most famous free-to-play player in the history of Clash Royale.
I would say that it's a lot easier now than it's been in the past, with friendly battles being up to like they level your cards up to tournament cap. Back when I was free to play and I was playing in big tournaments like the Super Magical Cup, I used to have epics that are level 2, and I had to go against people who had higher level epics or anything else. So I would say try to get every card first. So especially to tournament cap, that's what I tried to do with I made a new account recently. That's why I tried to do that account. Even though I knew I'd be playing like giant decks or Elixir Collector more, I didn't level those cards past level 7 or the tournament cap. So definitely first thing to do is get every card. And then after you do that, just play a bunch of challenges. I know a lot of people will attest to this, that playing ladder kind of deteriorates your skill because you're used to playing in a ladder meta, which is very different from a tournament meta. So just try to get every card first and then try to play different decks and just keep playing challenges.
Yeah, I know. I started a free-to-play account last year just to kind of see what it was like, and I think it took me 3 or 4 months of an alternate account, not even playing it as regularly as I played my normal one. I think it took me 3 months to get up to tournament cap. So yeah, if you log in, if you keep chess going 24/7, I think you can get your cards there relatively quick. At least the commons and the rares.
Yeah, and I think, well, and particularly trying to get into the competitive environment or trying to be a competitive player, the avenue for that is definitely to, I think you're definitely getting an opportunity. I mean, have your trophies at a decent level, have a decent amount of challenge cards ones if you're able to do that. I guess, no, the question was free to play, so if you can't play too many challenges, that's okay. But I really just think play for long enough to get your cards to tournament standard, and then you're set as far as being able to compete as a competitive player. Like, as long as you have almost all of the cards in the right tournament standard, you can compete. You are going to be at the same level as every other top player when you play friendly battles in events. And then as far as being able to compete, there are people hold streams to where they do bracket tourneys, and those aren't too hard to get into late at night, anytime, honestly, on Twitch. And then you can try to find a team that is within all the leagues, like Clash Wars, RPL, CRL, and like a couple others. And if you get on one of these teams, and if you are as good as you think you are, and you're able to beat these top players in friendly battles, then you're going to be able to get on the team. And if not, all these clans also have developmental clans where you'll have time to prove yourself.
Yeah.
And that's really how you get into these big leagues, by getting onto a team and then practicing and showing your skill within those. Like, I'm no longer in Mastery, but Team Case also does something similar to where you can start out low, and then if you consistently beat your peers and you show that you're good, you'll make it onto the main team eventually, or at least the second team, and then you'll be allowed to compete in these leagues. And yeah, like I said, also bracket tourneys, playing in like small tourneys that are just hosted for the community is a good way to get your name out there as well.
Shout out to Elite Nation and my new clan Ragnarok, who both have fantastic developmental systems for players who aren't even tourney capped sometimes yet. You can join a clan that is at your and you can talk more about this, Ash, but you can join a clan that's kind of at your level and people that are at your level and slowly get better from there and climb the ranks. Yeah,
those are a lot of good advice from you three, but not a ton to add to it. But yeah, I mean, the best advice that I can think of is just to play the best person in your clan. You know, if you can't afford to do classic challenges, which would be my number one piece of advice for you, is just grind classic challenges. Even as a free-to-play player, sometimes, you know, get a $10 gift card for your birthday, whatever, you know, and you still get gems from the game. So get as many classic challenges as you can. And when you're not doing that, just friendly battle against people who you think are better than you, and don't be afraid to ask for advice.
Watch your own replays too. And have other people watch your replays for you and point out what you would have done different. Yeah. You're so blinded sometimes because it's you playing, right? You're used to your perspective. You won't even notice your own mistakes sometimes. It requires somebody else, especially somebody who's really, really good at the game and thinks about it on a deep level, to point out some of that stuff to you.
Yeah, and I do coaching for players. And that's one of the main like tips I give to people. I don't know why I didn't think of this when I was talking, but if you're trying to improve as a player, I think obviously you should play often, but you should also stop. And I think the two tips that I can give as a player who like brought himself up just kind of on his own initiative is watch the TV Royale battles. Pick out a deck that's similar to yours. Figure out how the best players in the world play that deck, because I don't know like if everyone knows this, but the people that are ranked, the people that have the numbers next to them within the top 200, those aren't people with a lot of money. Those are people with a lot of money that have players playing on their account that are really, really good. So find a deck that's close to yours and then watch how they play it and then learn from that. And then also take a break every now and then and watch your replays, especially when you lose more than one or two in a row. And go through the entire replay, watch it. I know it may be boring, but watch the entire replay, identify your mistakes, and learn from them, because you don't learn as much when you're just grinding out games, because you make the same mistakes over and over again, and you kind of get these like catch-all ideas to where it's like, oh, well, he just had... I mean, if you're playing ladder, you're like, he just had higher levels than me. You just kind of shrug it off. Well, odds are you could have also played better. Because there's a reason top players, when they're on their like personal accounts, they're playing people that have like 2 levels higher than them or something insane like that. It's because they're just that much better, and despite the disadvantages, they're able to win because they play the game better. So I mean, and you should think of it as a good thing too. If you're playing someone that always has higher levels than you, odds are you're a better player than them. And you shouldn't use that as a negative. You should use that as motivation to keep on improving.
Yeah, I think there are plenty of YouTube channels as well. Another absolutely free avenue that you can watch. Colton, you can watch Clash with Ash. Yeah, there's so many guys. Clash with Ash's pro tips series, fantastic for learning decks that you've never played before, or archetypes that you've never played before, from literally the best guys in the world. Watch YouTube, study, try it out. You know?
Yeah, that's how I got started. I watch every single Orange Juice video. I watched the majority of Clash with Ash's videos. Like, I watched all of his episode about the Three Musketeer deck, because I don't play Three Musketeers much, and I learned so much watching. I forget what was his name.
I've had so many.
The one that finished first last season.
Mateo.
Yeah, Mateo. I learned a lot from that video. So, watching top players do their thing, especially when and YouTube is a great medium to where you can actually have. I mean, in the case of me or in the case of Ash, you can hear from those top players and have them explain it. And speaking to my own channel, I try to do a better and better job with each video of explaining that, because I know I can ramble at times and get off topic and stuff. So. I think it's really good. It's a good medium to have people explain things along with just seeing their gameplay.
Well, and shameless self-promotion, watch this show, because we're going to be talking about that every week, right?
Heck yeah, dude.
I'm excited for it.
Yeah.
So
see what kind of guests you have lined up.
Oh yeah.
I'm really excited to have the show back, and we want this to be really just a forum for the best content creators, the best pros to come on and talk about the game and try to give something back to the community as well.
Yeah.
The only bummer is that I can't listen. I'm not going to listen to it because I've already done it.
You can't watch.
We'll have another one for you. We'll have another one for you.
We'll get some new ones.
Is it going to be every week?
That's the goal, right? Yeah. I'd be happy to release it. I need to get a schedule for all my videos. It's a struggle too with Twitch with my college and everything, but yeah, I need to get a schedule going down. So hopefully it will be every single week on the same time each week, so people can look forward to it.
Nice.
We've already gone a little long, but do you want to just do as an outro the Crown Championship? Just hey, I'm super excited and this is great and blah blah blah, instead of a whole discussion about it. All right, cool. So last but not least, let's talk about the Crown Championship that was just announced by Supercell. I believe the first matches are starting on May 11th. That is another fantastic opportunity if you're a free-to-play player. There are going to be tournaments going around the clock. Test it out. Try your best and see if you can make it to what looks like brutal later rounds. What do you guys think about the Crown Championship?
I'm honestly really excited for it. I'm sad that I won't be playing in it, but I'll have people who play in it who I'm gonna support, like Colton or like my other friends. And like I'm even trying to ask. I told them if they need coaching or need advice or anything, I'm down to help out because even if it's not me winning it, I'm happy to see a friend winning it. So I'm really excited, Supercell, because they're making a big move by going hard into esports, and it's a big step for them towards the community because now that we really believe like they will give an outlet for us to really show who is the best player in the world.
I'm super, super excited about it as well. I mean, I'm sure that I'm not sure, but I suspect it might be a rocky first season, but I think this is going to be a yearly thing. And I think they're only going to get better the more they do. It's such an ambitious project when you look at the scale of it. So I was so overwhelmed just looking at like the PDF. I was just like, oh my God, this is just so huge, But it should be so cool. And as somebody who's not playing but will be covering it, it's exciting for me. I mean, the pressure is off. I love the idea of seeing who comes out on top. We were talked about this off air before we recorded, but like how many how many names will we recognize after those? Literally millions of people are weeded down, I think we'll recognize a lot, but that's just my guess.
Yeah.
And who are the stars that this tournament series is going to create? Like
it's going to be crazy.
Before this time last year, think of all the big names that have just popped up since then. I think it's fantastic. The community needs something like this. That's sort of an ongoing individual event. We've got some fantastic team events, but this is really great to see it have a wider spread, I think, to the community.
Yeah.
And $1 million. I mean, geez.
Yeah.
I mean,
hard to argue with that, right?
That's legit, right? You can't argue with that.
Yeah, and taking myself out of the shoes of a player that's going to be incredibly stressed out through every match he plays, as I was during CRNAO, and still it's a really fun experience as a player, but I think this is a really big thing for the scene because I think this will do really well. I think it may be rocky at first like CWA said, but I think this will do really well, and I think this will segue into many more competitive opportunities for many players. I think this will just be the beginning of the esport for Clash Royale. And I think that'll be something to look forward to as a pro player, even if you don't qualify as one of the 8. And if you do qualify as one of the 8, you're just going to blow up in terms of popularity and noticeability. So I think this is a good thing for every pro player, regardless of whether you make it or not. And it's just a good thing to have an official competition for people to watch, because at the time, I mean, right now, and when events aren't going on, it's like the only way they can see is through streams or through Facebook, and that can be difficult to have a bunch of people watch. So if you have this big league that everyone can anticipate and be ready for and build up hype around, it'll really further the scene as an esport for Clash Royale.
I mean, it shows you that Supercell is taking the game seriously as an esport still, and maybe continuing to push it.
Yeah.
And I'm also interested in seeing what kind of effect that has in the future on the rest of the community.
Mm-hmm.
You know, are there going to be more tournaments that spring up
I
because
hope
of this?
so. Yeah, and I think a big thing too, a message that I like to preach within any game is that yes, you're obviously catering to the competitive players when you make esport type events, but I also think there's something to be said about getting players into the competitive scene, because games such as League of Legends, to where I'm like an avid fan, even though I don't play it anymore. At a certain time, I was within the top 2 to 3% of players. Obviously, not good enough to go pro, but I was one of the best players in the game, so to speak, on like a statistical level. And I still watch the playoffs because they've done. Riot and League of Legends have done that good of a job at getting the casual fan base, or even the slightly competitive fan base, interested in the people who play their game better than anyone else. And I really think there's something to be said that as a casual player, you can be incredibly interested in watching players who are really, really good. And if you make a consistent league, if you put things on the line, if you hype things up, then you get people that don't even necessarily play the game anymore interested and continually watching, and you build the viewer base that way. Just because you're doing competitive events doesn't mean that you aren't catering to the casual fan base.
Yeah, just to piggyback on that too, Colton, as a final thought, I think that, I love how they're doing it regionally. I love how they're breaking down the demographics and really, like, because you can root for somebody. It gives you something to identify somebody from around your area to root for. And that to me is the missing element from a lot of these other tournaments. I don't play hockey. I've never put on skates in my entire life, but I'm a big Bruins fan,
Yeah.
So like, you don't have to be a pro player to enjoy watching someone who's really good at something go head to head in a competitive league. So
Yeah, exactly.
I got company, actually. I don't know if you guys heard that. So
No, you're good.
let's do
Wrap
an
it up.
outro real quick.
All right, so thank you all for watching the first episode, or the first 2 episodes of Royale Roundtable, however we decide to break that up. But yeah, I'm really excited to do this week to week, and I'm excited to have the guest on. Thank you, Clash with Ash and Clyde. Thanks so much for coming on. Sorry for any technical issues I had in setting up the stream and everything. But that being said, I think that first episode is going pretty well. And do you guys have any like shout outs or anything you want to say before we end it?
Well, shout out to Naders and Colton for hosting. Obviously, it's a pretty big thing.
Yeah, thanks, man.
They're doing for the community. Like, it's not easy to take out time to do this and have no basically guaranteed benefits in return, because they're not getting anything from this. They're doing it to help the community out. So big shout out to them. Shout out to Ash. I love being in these videos of Ash. It's always a fun time. And shout out to all the people who are going to be entering the Crown Championship. And I will be rooting for my friends, and I'll just glad to see what it'll be like being on the other side of the competition, where I'm just a fan and I'm a competitor.
Wow, very well said, Clyde. How do I follow that up? Jeez. Nah, seriously, you three, it's funny, I was talking about this to a few of my clanmates earlier today, but it's funny, there's in the community that so often gets a bad rep for being negative and full of drama and stuff like that. I think that because of people like you three, and this is like, it's so cheesy and corny, but it's so true. But like, because we have great people like you guys, I think that there's a bright future ahead for not only Clash Royale in a competitive sense, but also for the community. So like, just really pleased to talk to you guys in a level-headed, intelligent at times conversation about the game, and just have fun, but at the same time, hopefully, I really respect how all three of you put out a positive message and just like are really, really great role models and examples for younger people who are generally, more of the common demographic who are playing this game. So,
well, likewise, I don't think there's a better role model in this game than you, Ash. I gotta shout out you and Elite Nation for being the first when I was a level 9. Elite Nation took a chance on me, and I wouldn't be sitting here today if it wasn't for Ash and Elite Nation. So shout out to you guys big time. You're an amazing positive influence in the community.
Thanks, man. I was like, who's this Nader guy with a dollar sign?
Who is this dude? Who is this scrubby level 9 character?
Yeah. And speaking to that, like, yeah, I mean, I am doing this for the community, but I'm also doing it for my own benefit. Like, I really enjoy discussing this game. I wouldn't be a content creator. I obviously don't. I mean, I make some money off this, but not a ton. I do it because it's fun, and the same reason I compete at the highest level. I genuinely enjoy talking about this game and furthering the community and helping build the community and doing it in a positive way. So this is just another like outlet for me to do that, and I really enjoy it. And like I said, thank you guys for coming on. And I guess this will wrap up the first episode. So thank you all for watching. Oh, you have some? Oh, you said bye? Okay. Peace, guys.